Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the 12th of March 2012, the podcast that cleans without harsh chemicals. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's photobomb the news of the bogus. Nigel Robinson found that he didn't live in Paradise City after trying to illegally download a Slash album. No, the RIAA isn't after him for violating the DMCA, but a weird thing happened. Turns out, illegal file sharers can be unscrupulous, and Robin was far from knocking on heaven's door. What he thought was a Slash album was really child pornography. Robinson decided to be a good citizen and report this incident to the police. After telling them to come in, they shook his hand and gave him a medal for alerting them to this hideous crime, right? Wrong! What actually happened was that social services stepped in and stopped him from being alone with his daughter unsupervised. Guess Robinson didn't realize he was living in a Chinese democracy. Let's be clear, Robinson has not been charged with any crime, hasn't even been arrested. Nonetheless, despite the fact that it was Robinson himself who informed the police about this, social services decided, unilaterally and with no possibility for Robinson to appeal, that he was a dirty little thing. Quote, Mr. Robinson should not have unsupervised access with his own or other children. Robinson said, quote, I was willing to take it on the chin for downloading the music. I half expected to get arrested for that, but felt it was important because someone was obviously uploading this. Welcome to the jungle, Robinson. How bogus is this? He could have just deleted the files and nothing would have happened. But no, he admitted his illegal activity to the police so that the child pornographer could be caught and ended up taking the punishment himself. The experience made Robinson conclude, quote, It makes you feel as though you shouldn't have reported it in the first place. And that's the message police continually keep sending. If you see or know of a crime in progress, unless you have an appetite for destruction, keep your mouth shut. Or they'll come at you with more than a velvet revolver. Well, it looks like your job application is in order. Okay, you're hired. Just provide us with your address, your social security number, and your Facebook password. What? Yes, many employers and even colleges are asking applicants for their Facebook passwords, often as a condition of being accepted. For example, if you want a job at Maryland's Department of Corrections, you were required to turn over your Facebook password. After numerous complaints, they just started having people log into their accounts for them so they can snoop through everything. There have also been several college athletics programs across the country with this same requirement. For example, the University of North Carolina has this requirement in their college handbook. Quote, Each team must identify at least one coach or administrator who is responsible for having access to and regularly monitoring the content of team members' social networking sites and postings. The athletics department also reserves the right to have other staff members monitor athletes' posts. Hey, wait. Are all of these employers and colleges government run? Although some lawyers have come out and called this the major First Amendment violation it so clearly is, the practice is currently legal. But folks, this goes way beyond privacy issues. No one other than you should have your password to anything ever. Certainly not any government agent. It's bogus enough that people's Facebook posts are being used against them, but giving them direct access to your account? If there is any such thing as cyber terrorism, this would definitely qualify. Have you seen the price of gasoline lately? Here, take a look. Yeah, that can happen. And the news media has their scapegoats at the ready. Those greedy oil companies, heartless gas station owners, and insane speculators driving the price up, blaming everyone, as usual, except the real culprit, our own government. Here's the dirty secret. Oil prices aren't high right now. In fact, they're about 70 cents lower than where they would be based on the historical average of real oil prices. What's causing the increase is our old friend inflation, which, as we discussed last week, is much higher than our government is reporting. Let's use a couple of different metrics to make a proper comparison of oil prices. According to an analysis by Lewis Woodhill, when gold, historically a good hedge against inflation, is used as a price, then the current crude value of oil is 0.0602 ounces of gold per barrel. The average over time since 1971, however, is 0.0732 ounces per barrel, currently only 82% of its historical average. Similar comparisons have been done with gas prices in the stock market. Despite the fact that Ben Bernanke tries to eat his cake and have it too by claiming that his monetary policy causes the price of stocks to go up, but doesn't affect the price of oil, the historical data show that, for the most part, the rise in stock prices are met with a rise in oil prices as well. See, different kinds of prices are prone to change at different rates, but the prices of oil, gold, and stocks change very readily, multiple times a day. So the effects of inflation are felt there first and show up the most. This is what happens when government creates money out of thin air. It's not the oil or the stocks or the gold that's going up. It's the dollar that's going down. A price is a ratio. And when the value of the dollar drops, it takes more of those dollars to buy the things that we need. But since wages take a while to catch up with that, we all feel the pain of it. All of us, of course, except for politicians and their cronies. It's high time we started demanding that the media start putting the blame where it belongs, or they'll continue to rob us blind and get away with it. And now it's time to marvel at the mendacity of this week's biggest Bogon emitter. As anyone who's taken a civics class can tell you, Congress decides when the United States is at war and the military should be called into action. Leon Panetta apparently has never taken a civics class. He thinks it's the UN, not Congress, that does this.
Our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this.
No, Panetta. You don't decide whether to go and inform Congress before going in. You work for Congress, not the other way around. Listen how he responds to questions from Congressman Pete Sessions.
Because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and then we'll come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
No, well,
I want to just say to you, that's a big dish. Wouldn't you agree? You've served in the Congress.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that that's would be pretty breathtaking to the average American? So would you like to clarify that?
But I've also served with Republican presidents and Democratic presidents who has always reserved the right to defend this country if necessary.
But before we do this, you would seek permission of the international authorities.
If we're working with an international coalition and we're working with NATO, we would want to be able to get appropriate permissions in order to be able to do that. That's something that all of these countries would want to have some kind of legal basis on which to act.
What legal basis are you looking for?
Well, obviously, if NATO made the decision to go in, that would be one. If we developed an international coalition beyond NATO, then obviously some kind of UN security resolution would be.
What about Congress declaring war, huh, Panetta? Is that one of them?
So you're saying NATO would give you a legal basis, and an ad hoc coalition of nations would provide a legal basis?
If we were able to put together a coalition and were able to move together, then obviously we would seek whatever legal basis we would need in order to make that justified. I mean, we can't just pull them all together in a combat operation without getting the legal basis on which to act.
Who are you asking for the legal basis from?
If it's obviously, if the UN passed a security resolution as it did in Libya, we would do that. If NATO came together as we did in Bosnia, we would rely on that. So we have options here if we want to build the kind of international approach to dealing with the situation.
Well, I'm for having an international support, but I'm really baffled by the idea that somehow an international assembly provides a legal basis for the United States military to be deployed in combat. I don't believe it's close to being correct. They provide no legal authority. The only legal authority that's required to deploy the United States military is the Congress and the President and the law and the Constitution.
Let me just for the record be clear again, Senator, so there's no misunderstanding. When it comes to the national defense of this country, the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to act to defend this country, and we will.
Oh, we will? Good! For a minute there, I thought we were going to be engaging in yet more foreign aggression, getting into civil wars and stopping countries from getting nuclear power. But you're going to defend the country. Great! Then why do you need an international coalition? This shows not only sheer dishonesty, but complete disdain for the rule of law. He shuns the only mechanism the Constitution gives for calling the military into action, seeking instead to do it at the behest of international groups, people who aren't even in the United States. It would be hilarious if this attitude weren't killing thousands of American soldiers. Seems to me it's a very generous thing to Leon Panetta to only declare him to be this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And now, a rare treat. For the first time in 2012, someone has stepped forward with a demonstration so simple to implement and so easy to understand that he qualifies for the highest honor this podcast gives, the Silver Cluon Award. And this time, it goes to scientist and blogger Jonathan Corbett for clearly showing how a metal device can be snuck through the TSA's precious body scanners. In the video, which he sent to the TSA before publishing, he shows how a side pocket can completely hide a metal object. See, in the scanners, metal shows up as black, and so does the background around the person. So while a metal object in front of or behind the person shows up as a black silhouette, when it's on the person's side, it's black on black, completely invisible to the TSA agents. So he sewed a custom side pocket into one of his shirts and used it to sneak a metal object through the scanner undetected, keeping his video phone recording the whole way. And he did it not once, but twice. Once at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, and again at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport.
And while I carried the middle case empty, by one of malintent it could have easily been filled with razor blades, explosives, or one of Charlie Sheen's infamous 7-gram rocks of cocaine. With a bigger pocket perhaps sewn on the inside of a shirt, even a firearm could get through. It's important to note that any metal object of any size can use this technique. But it's beyond belief that the terrorists haven't already figured this out and are already plotting to use this against us. It's also beyond the belief that the TSA did not know everything that I just told you and arrogantly decided to disregard our safety. Anything to force Americans to give up our liberty to the federal government and our tax dollars to companies that are in bed with that government. The nude body scanner program is nothing but a giant fraud. The TSA is worse than ineffective. They are an epic fail, placing us all in danger.
After the video went viral and secured this award, the TSA responded with a blog post of their own in a feeble attempt at damage control. They claim, quote, "It is a crude attempt to allegedly show how to circumvent TSA screening procedures." But what they don't do is actually rebut his claim. They do not claim that his video was faked. They do not show how his technique would not work. Nothing. Just spin. This crude attempt was completely successful. Quote, "With all that said, it is one layer of our 20 layers of security, and is not a machine that has all the tools we need in one handy device. We never claimed it's the end-all be-all." But isn't it funny that in all this time, the TSA has never actually caught a terrorist? The underwear bomber, the shoe bomber, and the other attempts were all foiled after the would-be bombers made it past TSA security. At one point, they boasted the scanners being able to find, quote, "a tiny pill or tiny baggies of drugs." Really? That's a bragging point? That you're finding drugs instead of actual terrorists? Of the body scanners, they say, quote, "It is completely safe, and the vast majority use a generic image that completely addresses privacy concerns, but not apparently security concerns." But that's not their biggest fail, quote, "Also, keep in mind that this is optional. Anybody can opt out of the body scanner for a pat-down. Oh yes, we can opt for having our junk groped. Except if you're a terrorist, you're not going to opt out of the scanner, are you? If you're using this technique to slip something through, just sneak it through using this very simple method and avoid the pat-down. Nothing they wrote, not one thing, counters the fact that he foiled a $200,000 body scanner with a $5 sewing kit. And it's the beauty and simplicity of this that makes this award well earned for Jonathan Corbett. Enjoy your shiny new silver Cluon, Jonathan, and don't worry, you know how to sneak it past the TSA. And now let's run up the flagpole, the underwear of this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Sheriff Joe Arpaio is someone who's ridden the fail train for many years with his idiotic stance on the war on drugs, which was lambasted in an episode of Penn and Teller's show, to his ignorant and even racist views on immigration. But now he's taken the fail train all the way to Crazyville with his insistence that President Obama's birth certificate is a fake.
Sheriff Joe Arpaio says he suspects President Obama's birth certificate is a fake.
We believe probable cause exists indicating that forgery and fraud may have been committed.
Arpaio says his team of volunteer investigators believes President Obama's birth certificate is computer generated.
And how did he come to this evidence? From his so-called expert and lead investigator, Michael Zullo.
He says it took 6 months and 2,200 hours to come to the conclusion that President Obama's birth certificate from Hawaii, released by the White House last April, was manufactured.
It never was a paper document. It was literally created in the mind of a computer and resides on cyberspace.
Because birth certificates don't exist on paper anymore. What clearly happened was that a duplicate of the paper document, stored on microfilm or microfiche, was digitized and then printed on security paper. Standard procedure for government documents nowadays. So what's their big evidence?
We could take the document apart out of the same file released by the White House.
Mr. Obama's birth certificate, there are approximately 8 or 9 links and layers. Links and layers are indicative of a document being built.
Yes, the exact same Alex Jones crap I debunked last year. Apparently his wonderful experts didn't know that this is something that Adobe Acrobat always does when it scans and optimizes a document. And there are many other pieces of software that do the same thing. In one of my YouTube videos, I took a PDF that someone sent to me saying, show it happening with this and I'll believe it, and on video, I showed how the PDF optimizations result in exactly that kind of layering, separating text and other elements from a background and putting them on separate clipping masks, which these so-called experts keep wrongly calling layers, so that the document can be stored and printed at high quality with minimal space requirements.
You can't do that if you just scan in a birth certificate or any other document.
Complete and total Bogosity. Not only can you do it, it's done by default in Adobe Acrobat. We spanked Alex Jones' so-called experts last May on this issue, but it's one thing when the claim is made by a bunch of freaks on the radio, quite another when it's made by someone who has huge law enforcement powers. This is the level of investigation and critical thinking done by Sheriff Joe Arpaio, presumably into everything he does.
What do you say to the naysayers? And there are a lot of critics out there saying this is all, a bunch of BS.
Prove it. We did.
Already have, and your so-called experts, like Alex Jones's, are either incompetent morons or 100% bald-faced liars. Give me any similar document and a computer with a copy of Acrobat and Adobe Illustrator on it, and I'll show you directly that it breaks the scan apart into these clipping masks. If I had the ability, I'd go in front of Congress and the world and demonstrate it myself. But since I can't, I guess I'll have to settle for making Joe Arpaio, along with Michael Zullo and the rest of his so-called investigative team, and making them all this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this inflationary, quite contrary, not too scary, cash and carry, one Hail Mary, Fuji Cherry, and powdered non-dairy edition of the Bogosity podcast. Please visit the forums at Bogosity.tv, where you can read the show notes and join the discussion on these and other subjects. And if you'd like to contribute to the podcast, just send a question, statement, news article, or rant to podcast@Bogosity.tv. Put it in an audio file, and if it's good enough, it'll get played right in the podcast. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Karl Popper. If we are uncritical, we shall always find what we want. We shall look for and find confirmations, and we shall look away from and not see whatever might be dangerous to our pet theories. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 Imported License.